All right, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Tony Brown, and I am going to be running the JATE Writers Group interview today with, is it Dr. Ann Claire Anderson?
It is not. It is just
Okay,
Ann Claire, just a master's.
gotcha, gotcha. All right, so today I'm pleased to introduce Ann Claire Anderson. Ann Claire is the Senior Vice President at CORD. Today, we'll discuss Ann's article, or Ann Claire's article, in JATE titled Building a Well-Equipped, Skilled Technical Workforce by Adopting the Framework for Cross-Disciplinary STEM Core. Ann Claire, welcome, and thanks for being
Thank
with
you.
us today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Before we talk about writing, or excuse me, before we talk about writing in your JTE articles, I'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and describe where you live and go to school, or where you teach, and also talk a little bit about your background.
Okay, happy to. I am in Waco, Texas, where I work for CORD, which is a 45-year-old this year educational nonprofit organization. And we do a lot of work with community colleges. And so that's been my focus, community colleges, STEM and technology and career pathway education since 1996. I have been lucky to stay in one place, but also have taught technical writing at Baylor University, which is kind of in my backyard. And so that's part of the reason that I wanted to write for the journal. Was we had results coming out from our project work, which is preparing technicians for the future of work, part of the NSF ATE grant.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So very briefly describe the article that we're discussing today. Just use a couple of sentences and we'll talk more in detail about the article in a little bit.
Okay. Essentially, it's laying out the case for teaching across disciplines within what you may think of as your silo in those ATE in particular technologies. There are about 9 of them that they focus on in the solicitation. And so what we did was held employer convenings with faculty to find out where those overlaps are, and then to develop how that might be integrated. And so the article talks about that and then lays out some tools for doing that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. So what is your writing background? Where did you learn how to write peer-reviewed journal articles?
Partly because I'm a technical writer at heart, have been a technical writing instructor. And so that's a really natural fit for writing in an expository and explanatory way with an audience in mind. And then also reading journal articles. You get the flow of what the sequence should be and what chunks of content are needed to convey, your message to a particular audience.
Okay. All right. So how did you come up with the idea for this article?
Well, the journal was relatively new when I came up with the idea, and I am the PI on a project that I felt like had some good ideas for disseminating to the field and for the field to kind of mull over and give feedback on and try, at their own institutions. And so that was part of it. We're also told that the theme of an upcoming issue would be employer engagement or opportunities interacting with industry. And so there is a component of the project where that is a really, a strong piece of the project. And so I thought it was a good fit for an article from us.
Okay. Cool. All right. So did you have any co-authors for this article?
I did. Okay. I have an editor on staff who helped a little bit, where there were some pieces where I wanted some more research, not quantitative, but some qualitative in preparation for the project and for some of the activities of the project. I'm always immersing myself in other people's reports and organizational journals and, World Economic Forum, everything that comes out that's related, I'm immersed in, but I wanted somebody else to take a look at that. And then even more importantly, my project evaluator has been helpful in designing some of the mechanisms that we've used for gathering data. And so she's one of my co-authors, explaining how we did what we did.
Okay. All right. So, have you written multiple articles before, or was this your first one?
For a peer-reviewed journal, this is my first one. I have written for other journals.
Okay, all right. So when you've written for other journals, if you can't find co-authors, can you go at it by yourself?
Certainly.
If you did, how did that work out? If you could explain to us how that worked out, if you had to do it by yourself.
Yeah, doing it by myself, I pick a topic I know really, really well. and that's advice for anybody, something that if you had to give an elevator speech on, you could do really easily. And that, from there you outline it and, and go for it. And then of course, get some feedback from, colleagues, and trust, and who can, be honest with you and say, okay, this is ready. But yeah, absolutely. Somebody should try it on their own. You don't have to have co-authors. I mean, I almost didn't on this, but I really wanted more feedback on our evaluation process.
Yes. Okay. All right. So for this article here, once you figured out that you wanted to write this article for this journal, what's the first thing you did to prepare for writing for this article?
First thing was I went and looked at the author guidelines and tried to make sure that, I understood everything that would be required and was prepared to do it. And then, the next thing is I looked at articles. We were maybe in the second issue, or maybe even the second volume, first issue. And so I went and looked at what other people had written to see if there was any pattern. And honestly, there still wasn't quite yet. There were, essential elements, but I didn't see structures really, repeated. And so, the next thing was getting in touch with Peter and Janet and saying, hey, you think this is a good idea? And getting some feedback from them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So I'm one of the writers myself. Hopefully we're getting our peer-reviewed journal or article approved, but sometimes in this process, we feel like we don't have enough information, don't have enough data, don't have enough participants, or we just don't have enough experience in writing these journals or enough time. How did you know you had enough of all of that time, experience, participants, data? How did you know you had enough in order to start writing this article?
I had already written a white paper and circulated it to the field for some feedback, and was using some of the concepts in regional convenings of faculty and industry representatives, and was getting data from that. So I was ready to go forward.
Okay. All right. So going back to this peer-reviewed journal article that you wrote, how did you write this journal article? Did you write it top down? Did you write it bottom up? Or did you write it via specific sections? Can you discuss that's how you did that?
Yeah. I thought about it. At first, I thought about it with the outline of the white paper that I'd written in mind, and then kind of revised that in my head with this specific audience in mind and what they need to know. And so I was thinking of anybody interested in ATE programs, all of the PIs and co-PIs and any of the instructors out there. It was pretty linear, but there were sections where I thought, okay, this needs to be highlighted, or if they're only going to read this page, this is what I want them to see.
Okay, all right. Let's see. How long did it take you to write this article?
First draft, probably not very long, probably 2 weeks on and off, because I already had considerable materials, both curriculum and a white paper and data to pull from and organize.
Okay. All right. And what is your writing process when you're first thinking of writing an article? how do you start everything, and take us through your process from beginning all the way to the end where it's published?
Um, first, the concept, and then an environmental scan of what's out there, what's already been said, what's useful, and might bolster the case I'm about to make. Making sure it's original. Um, so that's the first piece. And so I gathered information. I usually start a file and I just pull and paste and have all of my citations ready to go for consideration. I outline it. And after I outline it, I fill in with content that I already have to a certain degree, or I just start writing, honestly, looking at, in this case, what do I know and what does the field need to know, and filling that in an outline format. I mean, it's pretty dull, pretty straightforward, but it's iterative, and you go through and you read and go, don't like that sentence or whatever. It continues. And then other places, I have to say the peer review process was also a critical piece of making the article what it ended up being. Getting that feedback changed it considerably and improved it considerably.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So, talking a little bit about your references, how did you find references to include in your paper?
Just like with a thesis or a dissertation, from the beginning of, from writing the proposal to ATE, that is where, I had been researching what the field is saying and what's out there and what's credible and what's helpful and what's applicable to community college technical education. And so I had stockpiled a lot of that. And so that is where many of the resources came from. And then asking people who are experts in data gathering and evaluation and analysis, processes that they used, and why is that the way to go about this, the quantitative and the qualitative, and the balance in between those. And that's something that I think is critical to a peer-reviewed journal for technology educators, is that balance between the quantitative and the qualitative when you present your case.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the submission process of your manuscript. How did your submission process go? Did you like it? You tell me some things that you didn't like about it. And also, what documents, if you can remember, what documents did you need to upload in order to get your manuscript approved?
There were some things that may have been unique to the ATE journal, and I don't know, like the cover letter explaining it. There was the actual, the manuscript itself. There were a series of images, like diagrams, and I did have help in my office creating those from people who are artistic, and it's just it's not difficult. It's annoying sometimes to try to get everything right, and that's just how it goes. I mean, that's going to be that way regardless of what journal you submit to. You're going to say, okay, I need this. Oh, okay, that's not quite right, or it's not displaying the way I want it, or whatever. But it was relatively painless, and I had like instant help. Janet,
Yep.
I don't know how to do this, or I'm not quite sure what you're asking for, or I can't find the piece. Where this goes. It was easy. I mean, when you have people that are easy to work with and easily accessible, that helps so much. And you don't always have that with journals.
Right, right, right. And just to give a tiny bit of background on what we're talking about here, if you have images inside of your article, it is good to have them either as an Excel spreadsheet, Word document, PowerPoint, but you want to have that separate from your manuscript. So the folks that go in and develop the article or develop the journal, they can have the master pieces so they can put it in and manipulate it how they need to instead of
And
taking an image.
and honestly, it looks different online than it does in
Right,
print. I mean,
right,
and that, that's where that becomes important.
right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about the peer review process. What was the peer review process like? And how did reading the reviews, is she still here?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
And
think
Ruth
we're in
just
the
popped up.
garage, in the
Yeah,
car.
Ruth just popped. Yeah, Ruth just popped up. All right. Sorry about that. So again, what was the peer review process like? How did reading the reviews make you feel? And what did you do once you received the reviews? Let's talk a little more about that.
I was surprised at the peer review process. Um, it was very, very thorough and had many, many, many variables. I don't know if they're 40 or 60 or how many, but there were a lot of tiny pieces to, for a reviewer to check. I received 2 peer reviews, and they were diametrically opposed. They were radically different. One review checked one box out of all of those. The other review checked probably 90% of them as needing to be addressed. So first I took a deep breath, not sure, how to process that at first. And so I went through and thought about it. And I also talked to other people on my project and my evaluator and said, read this and tell me, just give me your reactions on this. And then we'll go forward from there. And so I ended up, I needed to address all of the pieces of the peer reviewer who had a lot of questions about it. And some of it, as with like an ATE proposal review, you will have mismatches where they don't know the field. And so it's not a perfect match. So their questions are due to, not knowing quite where you're coming from. And so some of it was just explanatory, and some of it was request for data or, illustrations of data or more references, or in one case, it was, well, you're referencing yourself. And my comment was, well, I haven't found anything that does what we do or presents this content in a way that we do. So I need to reference, the project and authors from our project. In other cases, it was a need for data or for other references, and that strengthened my paper by 100%. I mean, it was really, really helpful to have someone with that viewpoint saying, what about this? What about this? I'm like, oh, good point. And so I gathered more references that explained what I was doing, or supported what I was doing in a more straightforward way. And then also brought in some data that I had collected, but had not made an image of, to illustrate. It's, out here in Excel spreadsheet. And so things like that were really helpful. It can be a little daunting when you see all the questions, but then when I look at I went back and saw who's on the peer review panel, and I'm like, okay, now it makes sense. I understand where they come from. And, so that was helpful as well, to go and look at that list and go, oh, okay, now it makes sense. I understand why they asked those questions. So it was daunting, but it was helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we are about to wrap up our session here. So I've got one last question for you.
Okay.
What advice would you give to new writers and who are starting their first peer-reviewed journal article?
Read other people's journal articles.
Okay.
find, if there is a journal that that you respect, then, go for that one. Go and try to make that happen. There are a lot that are super competitive. And so, you might want to start with one that has a smaller circulation or a more, niche market. And for me, this was a really good fit. And, AACC, is a good fit for me as well, communicating with community college faculty um, and PIs within the ATE community. So find your community. You already know who it is. Just find them. If you're not reading their journals, then do that, because you'll see whether you'll see a lot of things, like whether your natural writing style is a good fit, or whether there are co-authors who can help massage that and craft that with you. A more experienced writer who's done this before is a good help.
Okay.
Finding people that who are the people who work on the journal and shepherd the process. I think the ATE journal has done a really good job of shepherding people through the process. So that was really helpful.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And don't be scared.
Right. Right. All right.
So much is scary,
Mm-hmm.
There's too much out there that's scary, and we're judged. And this is the kind of thing that if you want to make an impact on the field, you should be writing.
Right. Right. I totally understand. Totally understand. All right, Ann Claire. Well, we appreciate you. Excuse me, on behalf of the JAT Writers Group, we appreciate you chatting with us about your article. We appreciate it. And for everyone that is out there, our next meeting is going to be in March. I believe March the 15th is how it's scheduled. So hopefully we will see you all next month. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
All right. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.